Hi everyone, this is Cheryl and welcome to my sewing room. This is block number 7 of the Beginner's Botanical Quilt. There will be 9 different blocks in this quilt. To view all of the blocks in this quilt, play this video until a green screen appears and then click on the link in the upper left hand corner. Use up your scraps before buying new fabric. I recommend you buy anywhere from 1/8 to 1/3 yard or buy fat quarters. So let's get started. This is the block layout. All of the dark lines represents the stitch line areas. The letters represent the different sections of the block. So A is the flower petal, B is the center of the flower, D is the stem, C are the leaves, and the letter E represents all of the background fabrics. You can make this flower any color that you like. If you need help or instructions on how to cut quilt fabric, then click on the link in the upper right hand corner. The flower petals, letter A, 4 4.5-inch squares. The flower center, letter B, 4 2.25-inch squares. Leaf, which is letter C, 2 2.5-inch by 4.5-inch. The stem, which is D, you'll need 1 1.5-inch by 4.5-inch. All of your background pieces, which is E, you'll need 4 2.5-inch squares. 4 1 3/4-inch squares, 8 1.5-inch squares, 4 2-inch by 2.5-inch, 2 2.5-inch by 6 1/4-inch, 2 2.5-inch by 8.5-inch. Take your background squares that are 2.5-inch, 1 3/4-inch, and 1.5-inch, and your flower center squares that are 2 1/4-inch, and draw lines on all of them going from corner to corner. Take your flower petal squares that are 4.5 inches and have the front side, the pretty side, facing up. Up here in this corner, put your 2.5-inch square, your 1 3/4-inch square, and these are background fabrics. Then one of your squares that is for the flower center, and that's 2 1/4 inches. Make sure that the lines that are drawn on the squares are going from side to side, not corner to corner, side to side. So this one is going side to side, and this one is going side to side. Stitch them on. Stitch very close to that line, but not on top of the line. So you'll stitch on this side of the line, over here on this side of the line, and then on this one, this side of the line. And again, stitch very close, but not on top. After stitching, I recommend that you press them, then take them all and trim the corners off. Place your 1/4-inch line on your ruler right on top of that stitch line and trim. Do this on all 3 corners. When you're done, it should look like this. Now press the seams. If your flower center, which this is my center, is lighter than the flower petal, then press this seam towards the flower petal. In my case, my flower center is darker than the petal, so I want to press this seam towards the flower center piece. Your other 2, if you're doing the background that is white or cream colored, press these seams towards the flower petal. When you're done, it would look like this. This one, the seam is going towards the flower center, The two background pieces are going towards the petal. Because you have stitched so many pieces to this 4.5-inch square, you need to double check to make sure it's still 4.5 inches square, because often the square will get a little distorted, so you need to clean it up and make sure that it's still the correct size. Place your 4.5-inch lines on your ruler on this side and this side. Place it on these two lines right here. And if you see that you have a lot sticking out over here, which I do, and over here, then center it, the 4.5-inch square area, just sort of center it so you have equal amounts sticking out on all 4 edges. And I have just a little bit here and there, so trim it off, then trim this side off. Take the block, take this corner and bring it over here. So turn it. Now place the 4.5-inch lines here and here on the 2 previously cut edges, because you don't want to trim the same side. You want to get the other side trimmed off. And go ahead and trim it. And that's only if you have something sticking out. And the last one. So do this on all of your squares. Arrange all of your squares so that the flower center all meet right in here. Stitch these 2 squares together, so bring front sides together and stitch 1/4 inch seam. Then bring these 2 together, line them up and stitch 1/4 inch seam. Press the seams on the back side right here. Then you're going to unfold them, but before you unfold them, make sure that the flower center is all going on the same side. For instance, I have mine on the left. It doesn't matter if they're both on the right, just as long as they're both on the same side. Then unfold and press the seam on top. And when you go to press, just gently push against this seam so it forces the seam to go in the same direction. Now, line up your blocks. Bring them front sides together. So bring them on top. Make sure that the seam on the bottom is going in the opposite direction than the one on top. Once you have it all lined up, then pin. And as soon as I can get my pin pad here, pin them real close. And then if you need to pin going all the way across, make sure your edges are all lined up. Then stitch 1/4 inch seam along here. After stitching, press this seam on the back side. Then unfold and press it on top. And I've pressed my seam all in one direction. Place the 2.5 inch by 8.5 inch background strips on opposite sides of the flower. Stitch 1/4 inch seam. Then press it with your iron. Unfold and press on top. And press the seams towards the outside. Take your 2 pieces that are 2.5 inches by 4.5 inches for the leaves. Place your 1.5 inch squares in the corners opposite of each other and stitch close to the line but not on top of the line. And on these you're going to stitch on this side of the line and on this side of the line, and the same thing here. So the line that's closest to the corner, and again stitch close to the line but not on top of the line. After stitching, make sure that you press the seams flat. Trim the corners off, so place the 1/4 inch line on your stitch line and trim it off. And do that in the opposite corner also. 1/4 inch line on the stitch line. And make sure you do it on both of your leaf pieces. After you have trimmed the corners off, then you want to press. Press your seams going in towards the leaf fabric. So when you're at your ironing board, you would push gently against this seam here to force that seam to go inward into the block. Place the last two 1.5 inch squares on opposite corners on both of your leaf blocks. Stitch on this side of the line and over here on this side of the line. Remember, do not stitch on top of the line, but very close to it. So trim the corners off just like you did before. Trim the other one off, and then cut that one off. Then again, square the little block up just to see, make sure there's no little strange pieces sticking out, and turn it, line it up again, and just make sure. It'll save you a lot of heartache later on if you do this now. And when you're done, this is what it should look like. On just one end of each leaf, place a 2.5 by 2 inch piece on the end, and then stitch a 1/4 inch seam. Press the seam on the back side, then unfold and press on top. Arrange the leaves in this pattern. The little pieces you just stitched on are on the outer edge. Take your 6 inch by 2.5 inch pieces, bring them on top, and stitch a 1/4 inch along there. To stitch the stem on, you want to bring it front sides together, and remember the stem needs to touch the leaf, so make sure you have this side on the outer edges here. Stitch 1/4 inch seam, and then when you're done on that side, take this side, bring it on top of the stem, and stitch a 1/4 inch seam. Press the seams in towards the stem. When you're done, the stems and the leaves should look like this. Stitch the top section and bottom section together. Make sure you line the stem up with the center seam up here. Bring front sides together, line it up, pin and stitch 1/4 inch seam all along here. After stitching, press your seam on the back side, then unfold and press on top. And I pressed this seam going towards the flower. After you've done all of that, then check to see how close you are to that 12.5 inch square. If you're way off, you've got pieces sticking out all over, or it's too short, it's way off, you need to go back and maybe take some of it apart and analyze what went wrong. It could be a number of things. Your fabric could not have been cut correctly. Your seam allowance wasn't exactly the right size. Maybe one seam was slightly smaller than a 1/4 inch and another one was slightly bigger than a 1/4 inch. Or you didn't press your seams when you should have. All of those steps are really important and they all work together. So if you're really pretty close to your 12.5 inch square, as I've told you before in the previous blocks, you're going to do your final squaring when all of your blocks are completed. Then I'm going to refer you to a video how to square a quilt block. And if you want to get a head start on how you need to do that process, then click on the link in the upper right hand corner. For more quilt projects, play this video until a green screen appears and then click on the links. You know, after I finished making this block, I've looked around my room and it looks like a tornado named Cheryl has been in here. And this is what happens to your sewing room when you get so busy you don't have time to clean up after yourself. Oh well, here's my monitor, and try ironing over there with all that stuff on there. And then there's a corner that's a little sloppy too. Here's my sewing machine area. It usually looks much worse than that. And then that corner's really bad. Let's look at my other sewing machine areas. I know, looks pretty bad, doesn't it? You're either going to find this funny or disgusting. Let me know what you think. Maria!
Okay.
Okay, all right. This is take 2. If you like this video, click on thumbs up and then click on share to share this video with your friends. And if you haven't subscribed yet, click on that red subscribe button down there in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Enter your email address so you receive emails about my latest video. If you're not receiving those email notifications, go to your cell phone or iPad, click on settings and turn notifications on. This is Maria, this is Manny, and this is,
Jamie.
I called him Tony. Jamie, let's do it again.